Hello, nice to see you on my channel, Hearts and Shadows. Enjoy watching.
My name's Charles. A few weeks before my twin brother's wedding, his fiancée accused me of hitting on her. My brother didn't ask questions. He sent a single text, "Stay away from us." I answered, "Done," and stepped back. That choice set off a chain of events none of us expected. To understand why that moment shook me, you've got to know what my brother and I were like before she ever came into the picture. We weren't just twins, we were best friends, almost like two sides of the same coin. We did everything together. Same neighborhood friends, same hobbies, same school. We packed up our things and moved to a new state together to start fresh. It was always us against the world. And trust me, it felt like the world gave us plenty of reasons to stick together. Our dad died before we were old enough to form a single memory of him. I've seen pictures, heard a few stories, but that's all we had, just pieces. Then, years later, our mom fought cancer for years. Years of hospitals, chemo, medications, and nights she could barely stand up. She passed away just days after we turned 24. 24. That's too young to be completely orphaned. After that, it was just the two of us. Sure, we had our mom's siblings here and there, but we never saw them much. Maybe once or twice a year, and even that was just out of politeness. The truth is, we didn't feel close to anyone else. Our whole support system was just the two of us. So when I say losing my brother felt like losing family all over again, I'm not exaggerating. That's why what happened later didn't just shake me. It broke something in me that I didn't even realize could still be broken. When my brother introduced me to the woman who would later become his fiancée, I was genuinely excited. He'd been talking about her for weeks, how smart she was, how driven, how she got him in ways no one else ever had. You know how it is when someone lights up while talking about the person they're madly in love with. It's hard not to feel that happiness too. I looked forward to meeting her. I imagined her being like the sister we never had. Someone who'd bring even more joy into our already tight-knit family dynamic. I welcomed her into our lives with open arms. At first, everything seemed fine. She was polite, a bit reserved with nothing to raise an eyebrow at. But slowly, things started to change with time. My brother and I are twins. We've been through everything together. That kind of bond isn't something you just replace. Or at least, that's what I thought. But once my brother's fiancée came into the picture, I began to notice that I wasn't seeing him as often. At first, I didn't think too much of it. He was in love, and I wanted him to enjoy that. I've never been the type to be clingy, especially since I wasn't in a relationship myself at the time. If anything, I figured he deserved this joy. But as weeks turned into months, it became clear that she wasn't just sharing space in his life. She was taking over mine too. Conversations we used to have became shorter. He started forgetting the little things we planned, or worse, changing his mind without explanation. One moment in particular sticks out. We had planned a road trip together, just like the ones we used to do every year without fail. It was our tradition, something we both always looked forward to. We had talked about it weeks in advance, planned out the route. But the day after we finalized things, he sent me a text completely out of the blue. "Hey man, I'm sorry. I can't go on the trip anymore." I called him right away, confused, trying to understand what had changed in less than 24 hours. But he was vague and dodgy even. I let it go, not wanting to push him. But a few weeks later, he let it slip that his fiancée had convinced him not to go because she said she'd feel lonely while he was gone. I wasn't mad, but I was disappointed. I just wish he had told me the truth instead of hiding behind a half excuse. I wasn't angry at him for choosing to stay with someone he loved. I mean, I get that. But I started to notice a pattern. He'd agree to something with me, we'd be on the same page, and then, after spending time with her, he'd flip. It was like I was talking to two different versions of him, the one before her and the one after. And the sad part was, I still didn't think she was the problem. Not yet. The closeness we had and the trust were slowly getting pushed to the background. And I had no idea just how far it would go. When my brother told me he wanted to propose, I didn't hesitate to support him. We're twins. We've been through everything together. And even though I was starting to see things in his fiancée that made me uncomfortable, I kept my mouth shut. At the time, I figured love could make people act in ways others might not understand. So, I followed him to the jewelry store, and we spent hours looking through rings. He wasn't flashy, didn't have a huge budget, but he picked something simple, elegant, and meaningful. He was proud of it, said it reminded him of her. But after he proposed, she didn't even give the ring a chance when she was alone with my brother. I still remember the look on his face when he told me what happened behind closed doors. She called the ring basic, said it looked like something from a vending machine. She told him she wanted a customized piece, something one of a kind, with a bigger stone, more sparkle. My brother, trying to keep the peace, promised he'd replace it later when he had more money. I asked him why he'd agree to that, and he just shrugged and said she deserved the best. I didn't argue, but deep down I felt something twist inside me. It didn't stop there. A few days later, she started pushing the idea that they shouldn't get married until they had their own house. Not rented, but owned. I could understand the logic, to an extent, of wanting stability. But it felt off, especially with the timing. Everything about the way she said it sounded like an ultimatum. No house, no wedding. My brother tried applying for a mortgage, but his credit wasn't strong enough. Turns out, hers wasn't either. That's when he came to me. He sat me down and explained how important this was to him. He told me he loved her, that this house would prove they were serious, that it was the foundation for their future. I could see how badly he wanted this to work. Even though I had my doubts, even though part of me was screaming that something wasn't sitting right, I agreed to help. I signed on as a guarantor for their mortgage application. It wasn't a small favor. It tied my financial credibility to theirs. But I did it. Because he was my brother, and that's what family does, right? But as I watched things unfold, her reactions, her demands, the way she looked at me like I was some outsider crashing their perfect little world, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was backing something built on shaky ground. Still, I kept quiet. I was starting to feel like I was watching someone I knew better than anyone become a stranger, bit by bit, decision by decision. After I agreed to be the guarantor for my brother's mortgage, his fiancée began acting strangely around me. I'd stop by to see my brother like I normally did, and she'd barely acknowledge me. Cold, distant, dismissive. She acted like I was coming to disturb them. At first, I didn't take it personally. I ignored it. My visits weren't about her anyway. They were about spending time with my brother. I stayed focused on him. Then, about a week later, out of nowhere, I got a text from my brother, saying, "Stay away from us." There was no context. I stared at the message for a good minute, wondering if I'd read it wrong. We've had our disagreements before, sure. Every pair of siblings does. But we've never had a falling out. Never anything that even came close to crossing a line like that. I didn't waste time. I called him right away. When he picked up, his voice was flat out cold. I asked him what was going on, and that's when he dropped the bomb. He told me that Sienna said I'd been hitting on her. I actually laughed at first because I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. He said she felt uncomfortable around me and accused me of making inappropriate comments. I was stunned, completely blindsided. I asked him, "Do you actually believe that?" And he just said, "I have no reason to doubt her." Just like that. I didn't even know how to respond anymore. My chest got tight. I felt a mix of shock, betrayal, and anger starting to bubble up. So I pressed him again. "So what, you believe her, and you don't believe me?" And instead of answering me directly, he came back with something. He said, "You've always criticized her. Maybe it's because you want her." That hurt more than I can explain. He took all the concern I ever showed, every red flag I ever pointed out, and twisted it into something dirty. This is the same person I stood by our whole lives. We grew up side by side. We've shared everything. And now he was accusing me of trying to take his fiancée from him? At that point, I knew there was no reasoning with him. He'd already made up his mind. He told me again, firmly this time, to stay away. I just said, "Done," and hung up. That was it. I didn't scream or throw anything. I didn't send him a long, emotional message. I stayed calm on the outside. But inside I was gutted. Not just because of the lies she told, but because my own twin didn't even give me the benefit of the doubt. He didn't ask for my side. He didn't think, even for a second, that I might be telling the truth. That kind of betrayal doesn't just sting, it leaves a hole. The next day, I woke up and sat with it. I thought about what had just happened, over and over. I thought about everything I had risked for him, especially becoming his guarantor. I realized something then. I couldn't leave my name tied to someone who now looked at me like a threat. I had to draw a line, even if it cost him. So I called the bank and withdrew my guarantorship. That was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, because deep down I knew what it meant. Sure enough, the loan got denied. Without my backing, the numbers didn't work anymore. They couldn't get the house. And when he found out, my brother didn't call to ask why. He just doubled down, told mutual friends that I was being vindictive, that I ruined everything on purpose. He swore he'd never speak to me again. As much as it hurt to be painted that way, I respected his decision. I didn't chase him. I didn't try to clear my name to anyone else. I just stepped back and focused on my own life. I had to, because carrying someone else's anger isn't the same as carrying love. And for the first time in our lives, my brother and I were walking separate roads, not because we wanted to, but because a lie had pushed us there. It had been over 3 months since my brother told me to stay away from him. We'd gone from being twins who practically shared a brain to complete strangers. I thought about it more than I wanted to all through that time. That evening, I was making dinner, just finished rinsing some vegetables, when my phone lit up, and it was him. My brother. I stared at the screen like it was playing a prank on me. For a second, I even thought maybe he dialed by accident. But I picked up. He sounded different. Not like his usual self. There was a pause, then he asked, "Can we talk? Like in person?" I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what to say. My first instinct was to protect myself. I wasn't sure if this was just another twist, another layer to the damage already done. So I told him I was busy, which was partly true. But really, I was still carrying a lot of anger, and maybe even some hurt pride. Still, later that night, I sat there thinking about everything we'd been through. How could we just leave things like this? Eventually, I texted him back and agreed to meet up. When we sat down face to face, I could see he hadn't been doing great. He didn't waste time. First thing he said was, "I'm sorry. I was wrong." He looked me straight in the eye and told me he shouldn't have believed what his fiancée said about me. Hearing him own up to it wasn't something I was expecting. But then it got heavier. He told me the whole truth about what had happened since we last spoke. After I backed out as guarantor for the mortgage, he and his fiancée shifted focus to something she described as a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. She'd met some people who were working on a tech-related venture and claimed they were offering insider access to early buy-ins. She pressured him to use the house down payment as capital for the investment, saying they could triple it before the wedding and buy a better home without a loan. He didn't think twice. He trusted her. He poured in everything he'd saved, which was $48,000. At first, everything seemed okay. She was even updating him, sending him spreadsheets and fake screenshots showing money coming in. But then, she stopped. Whenever he asked about it, she got defensive, accusing him of not trusting her. He started to get nervous. So he asked her for more details, contact info, documents, anything. But instead of reassuring him, she got angry. She'd explode at the simplest question and twist it like he was accusing her of being a liar. He said one night all he asked was, "Have you heard from them lately?" And she told him to stop acting broke and insecure. A few days later, she called him ungrateful for not trusting her judgment and stormed out. He thought it was just a bad fight. But before the 3rd month ended, he came home from work to find her side of the closet empty. No sauce, no clothes, not even a note. She was gone. He contacted the police. They launched an investigation, but the last report suggested she had likely fled the country. Took everything, money, electronics, even a few of his valuables. As I sat across from him, I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just felt sad. Sad that he had to learn this lesson the hardest way possible. Sad that he'd been manipulated to the point of pushing away his own brother. He looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "I let someone come between us, and I see that now. I'll never let it happen again." That moment wasn't just about an apology. It was about reckoning. It was the breaking point of everything, where the truth finally surfaced, and we were forced to confront what had been torn apart. And in that silence between us, we both knew nothing's going to be exactly the same again. Everything is now out in the open, but I want to share some lessons I've taken from all this. I'm not saying these are universal truths, but they're truths I've come to know in a very personal, very painful way. First, if someone you love accuses you without giving you the chance to speak, you have every right to walk away. Your voice matters, and silence in place of support is just another kind of betrayal. Second, always trust your instincts about people, even if it makes you unpopular. Just because everyone else sees gold doesn't mean you can't smell rust. And lastly, relationships should never cost you your identity or your core connections.